about the rest of you, but to me, the hysterical push by the radical left to tear down statues and monuments is not only an exercise in ignorance, but a terrible road to go down. I remember a few years ago when people wanted to tear down any and all statues and monuments to the Confederacy, which, whether people like it or not, is a pretty important part of America's history. And I remember thinking even back then just how ridiculous and nonsensical it is to try to rewrite history and erase the parts of it that we don't like. Rewriting history, editing out the inconvenient or messy parts, that's what fanatics do. That's what groups like ISIS and the Taliban did and continue to do. And the fact that we let it continue here in the United States is completely absurd. In the last month, protesters have pulled down and destroyed all kinds of monuments and statues across the United States and the world. Just this last week, the Museum of Natural History in New York City decided to remove a statue of Theodore Roosevelt, a man who, among other things, like being the president, was a dedicated conservationist. Which you'd think would appease the hippies, because he too liked helping the environment. But no. Not good enough. The statue in question is controversial because Roosevelt is flanked by a Native American on one side and a Black American on the other, which apparently explicitly depicts Black and Indigenous people as subjugated and racially inferior. I personally don't look at this statue and see racism, and I'd wager that most normal people don't look at this statue and see racial inferiority. And it's this type of subjective perception that spurs on this ridiculous crusade against historical figures and monuments. The radical left seem to forget that simply because they find something offensive doesn't mean that the rest of society does, which has brought us to a point where we let the literally screaming minority dictate how the silent majority should feel. Which begs the question, why do the feelings of the radical left supersede the logic of everyone else? ISIS, the Taliban, and other similar groups destroyed countless pre-Islamic monuments and artifacts they deemed insulting and therefore deserved to be destroyed. They attempted to erase parts of history that didn't fit their perception of the world. And just like these terrorist groups, radical leftists feel justified and even virtuous in targeting things they find offensive and then smashing them to pieces. We don't like it when ISIS does it, so why do we justify it when it happens in America? Retroactively judging figures of the past and then eviscerating not only their existence but their accomplishments is not helpful. And it's a dangerous road to go down. Are we going to start erasing all structures and symbols that we don't like from here on in? Who gets to decide what we keep and what we destroy? And more importantly, whose offense is deemed the most important when it comes to determining what stays? Times change and values change. But if we can't look to history to remind us how things used to be and how things were, then we can't progress as a society. The fact of the matter is, a lot of history is inconvenient. But that doesn't give anyone the right to erase it.